Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to talk about some films, more specifically films that are being filmed in the UK, are being allowed to resume production. Um, Now that is specific to the United Kingdom. That's whatever their country is saying is all right. As far as I know, most other places have not reopened film production. This is a lot of kind of the firsts, and these are also major productions as well, with the Batman being among them. The new Robert Pattinson film being directed by Matt Reeves. Now, looking at this, it's kind of this is the first trickle effect that we're going to see. We're going to see these early films kind of getting back and stuff like that. Films that don't require, or at least the shooting itself does not require them to leave the lot to an extreme extent. Um, the other one that's also resuming filming is Fantastic Beasts, which again is also filming in the UK. But the thing is that we're going to start to see now a slow trickle of films start to begin productions again as the various countries that they're filming in are going to give their permission to do so. Obviously, the big one is going to be, well, the big ones, I should say, are going to be LA and New York. With their various studios a lot of acting is done in New York, a lot of acting is done in Los Angeles. Different kinds of acting, but a lot either way. Um, so those various productions are probably going to continue, hopefully within the next month or so, and they can start getting back on track, so they don't have to keep pushing those release dates back for various projects that are still in the middle of actually shooting. Um, but I could see that I think after the European market is going to take a little bit is going to come out of this a little bit sooner because they went into it a little earlier. So it makes sense that they'd kind of be opening up now. Like I said, you can probably expect the United States in terms of film production to probably open up again in about a month, I would say, within the next month. Um, but the other thing that we kind of have to look at with this is the idea that, okay, now movies are going to begin filming again, but how long is it going to be until you can actually film on location? Because obviously, especially for big budgeted films, they're traveling to lots and lots of areas on the Earth to get a lot of those shots. Now, some of them might be close together, or they might be within the confines of a country like the continental United States or Canada, something like that. Um, but for the ones that do have to travel, that's going to be kind of a secondary one. So those ones might be postponed for a bit longer than the more localized productions. But it's going to be interesting to kind of see moving forward which ones are allowed to open up and which ones aren't, considering what various problems they're having with their production and trying to get things done in regards to continuing quarantines and flight bans. Um, but this isn't going to be too long of a video. This is mostly just me kind of saying that now we're finally coming out of the shell and Hollywood's finally starting to get these productions back in order. But at the same time, it's a situation where I think now Hollywood is going to have to kind of go forward and decide whether or not they want to keep their model, the model that they have right now for distributing films through theaters. And by the way, there's going to be a lot of repercussions from the whole theater studio fallout recently, and if Amazon actually starts buying up theaters as well. But going from that to this is the idea that now that we're starting to come out of the recession and the films are starting to regain production, will they continue to be produced in the same way after this year? Obviously, the films that are already in production are going to have to be finished, according to how they're supposed to be finished. But I'm curious in years to come, what type of productions we're actually going to see coming out of major studios. Are they going to do a lot of smaller productions that you can air on streaming services and put direct to video and stuff like that, or video on demand? Put stuff to that, or things like that nature. Are we going to see a lot more of that because they've seen some things that have worked in this, or are we going to see kind of an abandonment of that and a return to the old system, even if they are going to get outside pressure from the movie theaters, like what Universal's going through right now? So I'm curious to see what that actually is going to work itself out into, and whether or not that's actually going to be beneficial to the film industry moving forward if you have kind of that dual release style. But the other thing right now too that you're seeing because of all these delayed productions is there's a lot of productions that are going on right now that are, or a lot of things that I shouldn't say that, a lot of things that are being announced right now. A lot of the directors that I've been mentioning in my videos a few days ago. Stuff that Marvel's been attaching a lot of directors. Well, I shouldn't say Marvel, but Disney as a whole through Lucasfilm and Marvel have been attaching directors lately. Big name, relatively big name directors. Um, Sam Raimi, James Mangold, the people that are legends in the film industry at this point. So it's odd for them to be doing that at the same time. It's one of those ideas, maybe in because of Disney's financial issues that they're having, in addition to having their parks closed down, which is really the kind of the highlight of their financials. Um, the idea that now they're a little bit more desperate, and this is just kind of a philosophy that I've always sort of had on the film industry as a whole when it comes, especially when it comes to genre films and stuff like that, is once something gets worn out, what are they going to take a chance on to try and get that last, the goose to lay that last golden egg, that type of an idea. And we saw that to an extent with stuff like the slasher films, with the later ones, which mostly sucked. But I mean, there were a few of them that were sprinkled in there that were very original. The slasher boom was really the early '80s, but you still had a lot of really good ones that were coming out at the end of the '80s. Stuff like Hellraiser, which was 1987. Some of the later Friday the 13th, like Part 7, even though that was kind of destroyed by the MPAA, I still hold that film as good, even though I think anybody's only seen the edited version other than whatever the rough cut was that John Carl Buechler originally assembled. Um, but, at the same time, you also have horrible ones. You have stuff that comes out like, Jason X or Jason Goes to Hell, which were horrible. Those were released in the 90s. You had stuff like Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. You had crap like Halloween Resurrection. It was mostly the long-running franchises that kind of stayed alive into the 90s. The Scream sequels are god-awful. I don't really like the Scream sequels. I can take them or leave them. The first one is tolerable for the niche aspect of it. But the thing is that the slasher film evolved from a point in the early 80s where it was literally mostly about either a guy running around a suburban area or a guy running around in the woods murdering teenagers. And evolved into basically a scary guy running around in various places killing teenagers, just not always in the woods. But again, it's a genre that you can't really bend to an extreme degree. I shouldn't say that. You can, but it's a lot of the entries that were made in it were very cookie cutter, and a lot of the stuff that audiences wanted was not necessarily related to plot and story, but more the visual aspect, the gore, the creativeness of the kills, the makeup effects, stuff like that. Um, so you had a bit of a difference there, but the same thing is kind of happening with the superhero film, with the idea that, if Disney doesn't start making their money back, the MCU is the flagship of superhero films. Sony's been dragged into it. Well, I shouldn't say be dragged into it. Sony's optioned to be put into it at this point because of the Spider-Man deal, and Warner Brothers is still pumping out films at a fairly consistent rate, and they're doing all right. Like I said, Birds of Prey was a bit of a stumble, but we'll see what Wonder Woman 1984 does later this year. Probably not great numbers because of the coronavirus comeback, but still. But moving forward from that, uh, you know, if the MCU falters, if those movies start losing money, like what happened with the Star Wars films with Solo, what recourse does Disney have against that? They really don't, other than trying to experiment to try and get things back on track. And that means, bringing in people that are good directors that aren't just going to do whatever they're told, which are people like James Mangold and Sam Raimi. Bring those people in and just let them work their magic and let them make something original and let them make something good that is not being hampered by studio interference. And again, a lot of that the slasher movies that in the later 80s that were a little bit more original and into the 90s, a lot of those were people in studios that were willing to take risks because they knew that the genre was kind of trailing off, and again they wanted to try and get that kind of last really good one out of it. Like I said, I think you're going to see that with the superhero genre. I think you're going to see that with a lot of film genres right now because of how much money a lot of the studios lost because of basically the lack of a summer movie season this year. Unless we'll see what happens in August, but obviously it's not going to be anywhere close to what it normally is. So again, that was just kind of an update by me and a little bit of a, kind of an explanation on maybe where things might wind up going in the future, depending on how studios view what has happened so far involving their distribution methods, and what's going to involve, the movies and stuff that are going to come out in the following years and how heavily those movies are going to be changed because of this. But I want to know what you think. Do you think that we're going to see that kind of slow trickle of movies coming back in? Do you think that the movies are going to get, more and more? I don't want to say edgy, but kind of different and out there as this whole thing moves forward. And do you think that are movies really ever going to be the same after this in terms of the way that the industry functions? I'm curious what your thoughts are. So again, as usual, put them in the comments below. Hit the bell for notifications, hit the like button, subscribe, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?